Arsenal demonstrated their dominance and another side to their brilliance today. It wasn't a game for attacking flair. It wasn't a match that's going to live long in the memory of even Arsenal fans. This won't be a game. You'll see highlights of this game maybe in 10 years' time. It'll randomly pop up on your timeline on YouTube, or you'll watch, maybe something magical happens in May, and then there's I don't know, it won't be a DVD. You'll probably download it now or stream it, but maybe a documentary gets made, or a kind of commemorative piece of content gets put out by Arsenal, and you watch this back in 10 years and you go, oh, I remember that game now. Yeah, Eze scored against Palace. That'll be it. Because it wasn't full of beautiful, exciting football that will have rivals at the edge of their seats. Absolutely no, it wasn't. A big part of that, again, was Crystal Palace. And I've said this for a few weeks now, and I'm going to say it again and again and again and again. Football teams are scared to play Arsenal. Football teams are scared to open up and express themselves. And even at 1-0 down today, again, Palace, what did they really do? They broke the first team in 3 games in the Premier League to get a shot on target. But they didn't really commit to a counter-attack. The reason why most of their balls into the box were quite easily gathered by Raya was they did not have the balls. They did not have the confidence. They did not have the whereabouts to say, let's commit 2 or 3 additional players to an attack. You saw in the opening 15-20 minutes of the second half why. Because Arsenal would have pounced against them. In fact, it was 5 shots to 0 in that opening 15-20 minutes, because they did commit an extra player or 2 to the attack. They didn't sit as deep. And Arsenal what they couldn't do against Arsenal in that second half was win the ball back against them, because they weren't crowding out the spaces, and then go about a counter-attack. And teams are in this kind of conundrum with Arsenal. Do we open up and potentially get battered, or do we sit in and maybe nick a goal? Maybe nick a goal for an equaliser, maybe nick a goal for a win. And Arsenal get a lot of criticism because people view it as a them issue. And I didn't think Arsenal were great today. I think there was a lot of heavy touches. I think there was a lot of moments. Saka, Trossard, Zubimendi, actually, even Timber, where they had the ball in good spaces and one good pass and a player would have been in, or they needed a good touch and the ball to get trapped under their feet. So there was certainly some sloppiness from Arsenal today. I'm not going to deny that. But when you're playing in when you're trying to create fire under a fire blanket, 0 oxygen, it's exceedingly difficult indeed. But what Arsenal demonstrated today was growth. What Arsenal demonstrated today was the other side of dominance, which isn't in the goal-scoring area. It was defensively. I know Gooners watching all around the world would have been getting nervous in the last 10, 15 minutes of the game. Of course, I would be surprised if you were not nervous. It's your team and you want to win. But I was watching and I did not feel like you were going to concede. Every ball that went in, Gabriel, Mosquera, getting their heads to it. Hankopi was always there. Even when they did play some good football and they broke maybe the midfield line, almost straight away, a fullback was inverting, winning possession back. A centre-back was stepping out, winning possession back. It was brilliant. And then when you had to get your blocks in, fantastically done. This Arsenal team, there was a super chat we had on the terrace earlier, which I'm going to try and put back on the screen if I can find it, that says, told you yesterday Arsenal will win the league because set-piece dominance on both sides. I don't just think it's set-piece dominance on a defensive level. It's your defensive dominance. It's your ability to barely concede good quality chances. You barely concede on goal. You win most of your sort of 50-50s and defensive duels. And when you have to get a last-ditch tackle, a last-ditch block, a last-ditch clearance in, Arsenal do this fantastically. Man United, Arsenal at Old Trafford, first game of the season. A lot of people go, there weren't a lot of big chances, Terry, and it's not a great amount of XG for 22 shots, etc. Tells me you didn't watch the game. The amount of times United had good work, we got the ball into a really dangerous area. And suddenly, Saliba, bang with a block. Gabriel, bang with a block. Clearance, header, they get there. They find a way. And although, as I've said, this isn't going to be a game that lives long in the memory of Gooners, they look back on with fond memories, but it demonstrated a different side to you today. And a lot of people will say, Terry, you and others criticise Liverpool for not performing well and nicking wins 1-0. Why is this different? And it's a fair challenge. but it's a very simple thing to answer for me. Arsenal in these last 2 Premier League games where they've won 1-0 have been the better team. They haven't been getting peppered. They haven't had to rely on their goalkeeper to legitimately save them. If it hadn't been for 3... you think about Palace versus... I know it was away, but you think about Palace versus Liverpool. Without one of the best goalkeepers in the world putting in a top-class performance in Alisson, it would have been 3 or 4-0 down. What were the gilt-edged chances today for Crystal Palace? There is a difference. Smash and grab is normally when you've been under the cosh. You can't believe... sometimes, I can't believe we ain't conceded, and bang, you go and grab a goal. That isn't what today was. It wasn't a brilliant attacking performance from Arsenal, and there's definitely areas there to look at and to maybe criticise. And I thought that Trossard, Saka, Gyökeres, even... I know Eze scored a very good goal, and I'll get onto him in a moment. I didn't think they were particularly great. I didn't think the fullbacks were good in the attack. But the other area of the game, in terms of stopping the opponents, needs to be applauded. And as a general rule, I stand on what Sir Alex Ferguson always said. And that is that attacks win you games and defences win your titles. And right now, when you look across the Premier League, I was actually staggered and shocked to some degree to actually find yesterday, because I didn't look at the numbers, that Sunderland have only conceded 7 goals this season. Now the same as Man City. I think Tottenham have conceded 7. Aston Villa have conceded 8. But Arsenal sitting there, 3 goals conceded. They're on course to only concede 14 goals. If they carry on at this current run rate, it's 14 goals they would concede this season. And if they're anywhere between 14 and 20 goals conceded in the whole campaign, if they maintain this level of defensive discipline, Arsenal will win the league. The only area you could maybe criticise is the lack of open play goals. And I do understand that. But do I think they're going to come? Yes. Let's also not forget who Arsenal played today. This Crystal Palace team was on a crazy long unbeaten run. Has beaten Cities, has beaten Liverpool's on multiple occasions. Has a formidable record in the last 9 to 10 months. It was never an easy one. This isn't Burnley at home. This isn't Leeds United at home. This isn't Tottenham at home. Games that you could imagine Arsenal being a cakewalk. It's a really good team, Palace. They're really good. They're really hard. Loads of energy. High quality players. And I thought it was a very hard fought win. I want to shout about a particular player though today, and it was Eze, because I don't think he had the greatest games of all time, but it's very difficult sometimes when you play against your old team. And I want to speak about his goal, because I know technically it comes from a set piece. It was from the clearance of a set piece. But when I grew up as a kid, we never considered if a ball gets cleared from a set piece and then someone scores a screamer, or the ball's recycled very quickly and crossed back in, we never looked at it as a set piece goal. No one ever did. And I love what he did today. The volley from him, the guy, obviously he didn't celebrate. And that must have been, he actually looked really miserable when he scored. And it probably because he didn't want to celebrate and disrespect a club that essentially helped to give him his career. But at the same time, he just scored an absolute cracker at the Emirates in a really, really important game for Arsenal. So I felt a little sorry for him in that regard. But that kind of finish from Eze, I thought was just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant to see. And he gives Arsenal something different in that midfield as well. But what I will say, and what I'm really intrigued to see Arsenal do, is when Odegaard comes back, because what they do miss in that area is Odegaard's passing. The one thing, whether it's even Saka, whether it's Saka, Eze, Timber inverted, none of them have an eye for a pass to break a line in the same way that Martin Odegaard does. None of them. Declan Rice, he's a cut above them in that area, which I think is key. But as I said at the beginning, and I'll reiterate again, I've seen Arsenal in the past 3 to 4 years have so many opportunities to catch up with a team ahead of them in a title race, or pull an extra point, 3 points clear, capitalise on a bad weekend for their title rivals, and fail on many, many occasions. We saw last season games exactly like this, and these games exist. And do not be gaslit this week. Do not be hoodwinked. Do not be fooled. I already know the Sky Sports producers, TNT producers, BBC producers, they're on ChatGPT right now, and they're typing away saying, create a script and a narrative to turn being top and clear of the 2 other favourites by 6 and 7 points, but they're lacking open play goals. create a negative narrative, and they'll be coaching that into their pundits, and they'll be rehearsing it, and they'll be saying it, and they'll be looking to go in at you. But this was a game last season. This is what you'll only hear this from honest and good pundits. This was a game last year that Liverpool, that Arsenal were dropping points in. This was a game last year where they weren't getting that second goal. They were collapsing. They were conceding late. They were conceding from a set piece. And as it stands, 9 games in, this Arsenal team has grown. This Arsenal team has gone to another level in terms of mentality and perseverance. And I still think from an attacking element has got levels to go up. But as ever, look, I want your thoughts. I want your feelings. I want your opinions on this in our comment section below. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, and all of that jazz. But Arsenal with a massive win to go clear at the top of the Premier League.